We've been steadily progressing through the Easter season, and now we're at the very end. The gospel narratives tell us that 40 days after Jesus' resurrection, he led his disciples out to the hillside and gave them the great commandment to go and preach the good news among all peoples, and then he ascended into heaven. So if you start with Easter Day and count 40 days, you get to Thursday, 6.5 weeks after Easter Day. So Ascension Day is actually always on a Thursday. It's a little bit of a hard sell to get people to come out on a Thursday night. Most years, Church of the Ascension, the parish church that St. John's founded, most years they do have an Ascension Day service on Thursday. So if you missed it this year and really want the full experience, you can maybe put that on your calendar for next year. But like many Episcopal churches, we observe Ascension Day on that 7th Sunday of Easter. So even though it's bending the rules just a little bit, we're 42 days after the resurrection, not 40, we will be celebrating the Feast of the Ascension on Sunday. And this is a principal feast of the Episcopal Church, and so it has its own beautiful array of prayers and wonderful hymns, and of course the scriptures that are associated with Jesus' ascension into heaven. So we'll start right off. It's a very joyous Sunday. We really think about this as being a crowning moment in Jesus' earthly ministry, and the music is typically very effusive and very triumphant. We'll start off, "Hail the day that sees him rise," with lots of alleluias. Wonderful text by Charles Wesley and this great Welsh tune that it's paired with in our hymnal. Wonderful way to get things going. The scriptures also talked about, as I say, the last words that Jesus speaks in his earthly ministry is this, what we call now the Great Commandment, go and preach, and to follow Christ's example. And so at the sequence, we will take a little bit of a pause. Everything at Ascension is so big and joyous. We like to have a little bit of variety in the liturgy. And at the sequence, we will be singing "Be Thou My Vision," of course, with that final verse, "High King of Heaven," sort of a nod to that Ascension as well. But a little bit more of an introspective moment in what is otherwise a very effusive Sunday. And speaking of effusive music, the choir at the offertory will be singing a motet by the Irish-born English composer Charles Villiers Stanford, Celus Ascendit Hodie. Today, ascended into heaven is Christ the Lord. It's a very interesting piece from an interesting set. Stanford wrote a lot of English church music, almost all of it in English, because at the time of his life, in the 1880s, 1890s, and the first part of the 20th century, the English church was very much prejudiced towards singing texts in English. Stanford was for a while the director of music at Trinity College in Cambridge at their chapel. And it seems that it was during this time, in the late 1880s, that he wrote these 3 motets in Latin. And the choir sings all 3 of them at various times. They're in our repertoire. And this one, Celus Ascendit Hodie, is written for 2 choirs that sing back and forth antiphonally. It's unclear why Stanford wrote these in Latin when that would have really been associated with more of a Catholic observation. And in fact, there is some correspondence that exists where Stanford was writing back and forth with his publisher, and he talks about these 3 Latin or Catholic introits. And most scholars believe that he's probably referring to these motets, even though these motets are very much not introits. But he may have been trying to sort of market his music to both the Church of England and the Roman Catholic worlds, maybe trying to get a little bit more market share for himself. Whatever his motivation in setting these pieces, they are really wonderful. All 3 of the motets are exquisite pieces of choral music. And as I say, the Celus Ascendit Hodie, it has these 2 choirs going back and forth. So you'll see the choir, what we call the decani choir, sitting on the side of the pulpit, and the cantorus choir sitting on the side of the lectern as they go back and forth. The first choir will sing some text, and then the second choir interrupts with an alleluia. And that back and forth goes all the way through a fairly short piece, but full of joy and exuberance. So here we are at this end of the great 50 days of Easter, our last Sunday in the Easter season. We hope that as you continue to celebrate the resurrection, you will finish off this Easter season with us here worshiping at St. John's Cathedral.